Hello and welcome to Our American States, a podcast from the National Conference of State Legislatures. I'm your host, Ed Smith.
I do think that we bring a different focus to the legislative process, to the bills, the policy. I think we're more focused a lot of times on how it affects down the road.
That was Representative DeAnn Vaught, a Republican of Arkansas and one of my guests on the podcast. She's joined by Senator Dafna Michaelson Jenet, a Democrat of Colorado. They are, respectively, the incoming and current president of the Women's Legislative Network of NCSL, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary. Every female state legislator in the 50 states, territories, and the District of Columbia belong to the Women's Legislative Network. The network sponsors informational briefings, hosts skill-building workshops for women, and opportunities for female legislators to interact. Representative Vaught and Senator Michaelson Jenet talked about how they decided to run for the legislature, the obstacles they faced, and the perspective female legislators bring to the job. They also shared their passion for encouraging other women to run for office. Here's our discussion. Senator, Representative, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for both of you coming on the show to talk about the 40th anniversary of the Women's Legislative Network and women in legislatures generally. I'd like to start with a personal question, though, and I want to know about your own journey to the legislature. So I'd like to ask both of you what brought you into public service. And Senator Michaelson Jenet, why don't you start?
My story is, I think, typical of many women. I had a struggle in my family. My son was struggling at school in ways that we couldn't understand. We didn't get the right testing. He didn't get the right support. And when he was 9 years old, he attempted suicide at school. I was at a loss for what to do to help him. At the same time, I was volunteering at 2 of our juvenile correctional facilities. And I realized that the boys I was working with were just like my son. My son was on a path that I was very afraid of, and these kids wound up in the juvenile justice system, and I wanted to know why. Ultimately, I decided that being across the table wasn't enough. I had to be at the table making the decisions to help try and catch these kids before they fall into our criminal justice system, the same way I needed to try and catch my own son who was falling through the cracks.
And Representative Vaught, how about for you? What was the motivation?
So I am not typical whenever it comes to legislator. This is nothing I thought I would ever be doing in my entire life. If you saw my grades in school, you'd have thought I wouldn't be able to do this job either. I had a man from the legislature who I was friends with come and ask me if I would run. I basically blew him off and told him no. And he, as he got ready to leave after talking to me for about 45 minutes, said, "Hey, Dee, do me a favor, at least pray about it." I very much did not pray about it very well. And the last day before you could go sign up, there was an ice storm coming. And I said, "See, I knew I wasn't supposed to do this job." And my 18-year-old daughter looked at me and said, "Mom, whenever you ever taught us to be Jonah and run from what God's calling you to do?" And I knew then I had to at least go sign my name up, pay my money to put my name on the ballot, and go from there.
Well, Representative, I think maybe you're more typical than you think in that women often need a lot of persuasion to run. Let me stay with you for just a second. You're from a rural district, and I wonder what you had to overcome, maybe in people's perceptions of you, in order to get elected, and what the key issues were that you really told people you wanted to work on when you got to the legislature.
Well, one, I didn't even know what the legislature was about, so I had no idea what I was going to be working on. That's just the honest to God truth. I had to Google how to get to Little Rock. I've lived on a farm my entire life. The way of rural life is important to me, and I wanted to fight for that right to be able to live my rural life. I was a no-name, and I was the first person to ever run on the Republican ticket in my district, first person to ever be elected to a Republican office in my district. And as I knocked on doors, I didn't promise anything to anybody because I truly didn't know what to do. But I did promise that I would do what the people asked me to do. And that's what I've tried to do over the past 10 years.
And Senator, how about for you? What kind of obstacles did you face, particularly in regards to being a woman?
Well, I had an interesting situation. When I decided to run, there was another gentleman in my party who was also interested in running. And so we were moving forward together to get on the ballot. In Colorado, you have to go through the caucus process to get on the ballot. At the caucus, he had hired a new campaign manager. I was going around giving stickers to people, hoping to earn their vote on the caucus. And apparently he was going around and saying, see that skank in the cowboy boots? That's who's running against him. People didn't like that. People didn't like that at all. And as a matter of fact, I beat him at the caucus. He couldn't even qualify for the ballot at the caucus because I got so many more votes than he did. It was a really interesting time because I was trying so hard, calling all the people, sending them handwritten postcards, doing all the things that you do to make it onto the ballot. And here I was minimized to a bad word, and it really felt gross.
Well, that's appalling. Politics, as you both know all too well, is a game of very sharp elbows, but even given that, that seems pretty appalling. Let me ask you, Senator, you talked a little bit about your personal experience. How has that translated into your work in the legislature? How has that driven you in terms of your priorities?
It's driven me very hard. I work on youth mental health issues every single year. I'm most proud of the I Matter program, which offers free therapy to any school-aged youth who wants it in Colorado. I talk about it ad nauseum. I believe that there should be free therapy for kids everywhere, but I'm really happy that my Colorado kids have access to free therapy when they want, how they want. It's all because of my son. He's my why I get up in the morning. He's my why I deal with sometimes political nonsense. He's my why I will stand up there and fight every single day for the rights of kids to have agency in their therapy. It's not the only work that I do, but it is the passion work that I do.
Representative, and I could ask this question of both of you, but you're a farmer, you're the mother of three, you're a legislator. That's a lot. How do you do it?
And I'm also the DD to 7 grandbabies. So, and that's what it's all about, is when you get to that. But yeah, so without the support of my family and them picking up and helping in areas in which I had to let go to become a legislator and be in the legislature, I wouldn't be able to do what I get to do. My husband is so supportive. If there's stuff here that I need him to go to and I can't get to it, he'll do me a solid and he'll go, even though it's not the world that he likes to live in, the legislature part of it, but he'll go and support and be with me. I have great, amazing friends who have also been able to help me out whenever I need help. I can't go to this event. Can you go to it for me and be my voice? I live in a rural area. I could have 7 events in one night. And often I have 5. There's been several times that I at least have 5 at the same exact time. And without those friends picking up and helping me and going and being my voice at some of the events, there's no way I could juggle all the plates.
Let me ask you more specifically about being a woman in the Arkansas House. You're a committee chair, puts you in in that leadership area, and that's a House that's 3/4 men. I wonder how you navigate that. And do you think that female legislators bring a different perspective, a different sensibility to the work?
I do think that we bring a different focus to the legislative process, to the bills, the policy. I think we're more focused a lot of times on how it affects down the road. In reality, I think guys are like, this is great policy, but how does it work whenever you get to the other side of the fence for the actual constituents in our district? And I think we do bring that type of focus. I've been ag chair. I was house manager. Now I'm back to house manager. I've been rules chair. I've had several leadership positions. I grew up like my friends were mainly guy friends, so I don't think it was that big of a deal for me to fit back in with the guys in the legislature. They actually call me the mom of the floor because I want to make sure everybody's where they're supposed to be. Make sure you've got all your bills filed. Let's make sure things are moving and rocking and rolling.
Well, we all need a mom around, that's for sure. Senator, I'm fascinated by the fact that you wrote a book about visiting all 50 states. I've been to a lot of states, but I haven't made it to all 50. And I wonder how that helped shape your focus. Obviously, you represent constituents in Colorado, but traveling around the country, I think, must have given you a kind of perspective that most of us don't have.
It was fascinating, first of all, and I did the all 50 states in 1 year and interviewed ordinary people solving problems in their communities. And our job as legislators is problem solver. But the truth of the matter is the solution is found in the community. And that's what I learned traveling around this country, that I might have great ideas, but the solution for that community is found in that community. I take that with me in my legislation all the time. I reach out, I try to hear what they're saying. Listening is key, and make sure that I'm shaping policy that meets the needs of the community.
Now, I'd like to ask both of you this question. And the senator and I discussed this briefly before we started recording. State legislatures have about maybe a little more than 30% of their group is female. In the Congress, it's less than that. Women, of course, make up about 51% of the population in the United States. And I wonder if you could just comment on that and why we're still there and what kind of barriers women face. And Representative, why don't you start?
Well, I think most women probably are focused on family and being there for their children and raising their kids. And in reality, I thought it was a man's world. I think that's probably one of the reasons why we don't look at it is because we think it's for the men. In reality, we bring a great piece of the puzzle when we're in the legislature. Probably most women don't realize that they can do. I would have never thought I could do this. I have a reading disorder. I'd been abused as a child. Definitely did not have the grades for this. I consider myself a country girl at heart and didn't ever see myself doing it. And I don't think if you can't see yourself doing it, I don't think you can do it. In reality, women can do this job, and more women need to step in and do this job so we have better policy that affects our areas and our communities.
How about for you, Senator? What's your perspective on that?
I agree with what the representative put forward, and also it's pretty common for women not to call themselves experts. So they don't see themselves as experts in any field. They might see themselves as someone of value in that field, but they don't see themselves as experts. And they think you have to be an expert to be in the legislature. And if you don't see yourself as an expert, you're not going to put yourself in those roles. And we know that women need to be asked like 7 times to run for office. And the truth of the matter is, I was asked to run for office too. And it was at that time all of the things were happening with my son. And I realized, okay, I can be at the table too. So we all have to do a better job of asking women to run. I try and make sure when I have students in my office that I ask all of them to run. I say this is a job for all of you because, we don't want the guys to feel left out, but we need the girls to step up and the women to move forward our country.
So, Senator, let me stay with you. The Women's Legislative Network, you're the president now, and the representative is the incoming president. Can you talk a little bit about the value of that, why you got involved, and why you wanted a leadership role? We were talking earlier about how busy your lives are with all the roles you play, and this is another one you've put on top of that. So, why did you want to take that on?
The Women's Legislative Network for me has been a great opportunity to meet other women legislators. And like it or not, it's easier for a woman legislator to bond with another woman legislator. and talk about the challenges and experiences that we're having. And even more than that, what I think is the great value of this organization is that it gives us an opportunity to talk about legislative laws that we are working on together. And while I may be a different party than the representative, we might come to the same solution on a piece of legislation that we can both move in our respective chambers, and will have grown the power of women being involved in the process. And I wanted to be a leader of this organization because I have ideas for how we can work more together, mentor each other together, and be there as sounding boards for each other.
Well, this organization always did strike me as a great example, as you're saying, of bipartisanship, and that there's a lot more that binds people together maybe than pulls them apart, though in the current time, we may not think that. Representative, how about you? Why did you want to get involved in the Women's Legislative Network, and particularly why did you want to seek a leadership position?
So I echo what my friend Senator also said. She hit every point that I would hit. A couple of reasons that I felt it be important for me to run is because I felt like the Women's Legislative Network wasn't shining a bright light on them within NCSL. And I think it's important that they take the Women's Legislative Network and put a spotlight on it so other women know what this organization is about. And until they do that, we're going to be in the bottom basement room where we don't have enough room for everybody to sit, and we eat with our food in our laps. And I think it's important that NCSL takes notice of this organization and pushes it to the forefront. The other reason that I felt that it was important for me to run for a leadership position within this organization is I tell young girls all the time, like, I want y'all to run for your school politics, run for something with your city, something with your county, get involved to do something within one of your organizations. And if I'm going to spout that to them and ask them to do it, then I need to step up and do that in my life also.
Well, as we finish up here, Representative, let me stick with you for just a second. I want to ask both of you this. Do you just have any other thoughts you'd like to share with your colleagues listening, and maybe particularly with other women listening?
I want women to know that they're needed and they're wanted and they're valued within any politics reigns in which they want to run for. I think it's important that we have more women step up and do it because I think that shows young women that they too can do it at any age, at any time in their life. And I try so hard to encourage more and more and more to run. We bring such value. And it's like the senator said, you don't have to be an expert. I'm definitely not an expert in lots of things that we discuss on the House floor, but I have friends in which I contact and I ask them what their thoughts are. We really need more women, I don't care what age, to step in to these roles and really start leading our states, our towns, our counties, our nation into a direction in which everybody is more cohesive.
Senator, let me give you the final word. What thoughts do you have that you want to share?
I want to share that it is an incredible experience being a legislator. Women should not be afraid of that experience and should not be locked out of that experience. I feel the Women's Legislative Network is here for other legislators who are having a hard time, because we can have a hard time on the floor and in a boys' club. So we are here to help mentor and guide and be part of your success. And I hope that more women legislators will participate with the Women's Legislative Network, and women who are listening to this, do run for office. Find the office that matters to you most. Find your why in this world and let it drive you.
Well, I want to thank you both for just a fabulous discussion. I think you both are able to articulate this perspective so well, and I think people will really benefit from it. Thank you very much, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been talking with Representative DeAnn Vaught of Arkansas and Senator Dafna Michaelson Jenet of Colorado about the 40th anniversary of the Women's Legislative Network of NCSL. Thanks for listening. You can check out all the podcasts from the National Conference of State Legislatures by searching for NCSL Podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast, Our American States, dives into some of the most challenging public policy issues facing legislators. And Across the Aisle, host Kelly Griffin tells stories of bipartisanship. Also, check out our special series, Building Democracy, on the history of legislatures.